Go. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We're going to be talking about our favorite subject, blockchain, but more importantly, FinTech and payments around the blockchain space. We know that a lot has continued to happen in this area. We had breakout news from Square last week getting into the purchase of Tidal and potentially getting into paying artists, maybe. We're still waiting to see. We have PayPal purchasing crypto security firm Curve that was confirmed today. We have Microsoft talking about their new decentralized identity protocol being launched out into the space. JPM or JP Morgan has 34 new positions put out into the world around the US, India, and Singapore, all focused around Onyx, their new blockchain division focused on the JPM coin. We've seen a ton happen in the NFT space. We've now got crypto and sports betting coming together. There's so much happening, but let's break it down. Let's bring investors in from around the world to tell us why this is so important and also what their perspective is from their respected regions around the world and the investments that they're making as well. So before we get started, a big thank you for you all joining in. And if this is your first time, make sure you click subscribe. Also share the episode as well. And new feature, we've got the comments box open and live. Feel free to send over any questions, comments, hellos, and we will do our best to ask them in real time. If not, we'll save them to the end and we're all available afterwards as well. And if you'd like to be on a show like today, do reach out. We'll find that right spot for you. Big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Let's dive in and talk about blockchain, specific around FinTech and payments today. First up, to give us a little intro about themselves, Gianpaolo, welcome back. A little intro and a little background for everybody.
Yes, hello everyone. This is Gianpaolo Parigi. I'm a VC, private equity specialist, and a serial entrepreneur. And I'm operating also in the FinTech space and decentralized finance environment. I'm on the board of the advisory of KingSwap. It's a Singapore-based DeFi platform. And I've been 30 years in the financial industry. And so welcome everyone here today and ready to answer any questions I can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gianpaolo. Next up, Henry, welcome back as well. A short intro and background for everybody.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Good morning, everyone. Henry on here. Good morning, afternoon, evening. I know people all around the world are joining us. Henry on here. I have an advisory firm that I work with startups and SMBs, mostly on fractional CFO and COO roles. Also a venture partner of a venture fund focusing on early stage FinTech, blockchain, consumer, enterprise, data-driven companies. Great to be here. Blockchain, FinTech, payment, it's my topic. So looking forward to share knowledge and more importantly, to exchange knowledge with my colleagues here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you as well. Greg, welcome back. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Hi, I'm Greg Kidd. I have a company, Global ID, Portable Identity, but I also have a firm, Hard Yakka, which is making investments primarily in the identity and payment space. So we're all over FinTech and marketplaces. Calling in from Palm Springs today. Take care.
Wonderful. Nice. David, welcome back as well. A little intro, a little background.
I'm sitting in the cold of New Jersey, but it is sunny today, but certainly would rather be where Greg is. I co-founded and manage ProChain Capital. ProChain Capital is a crypto-based hedge fund with a multi-strategy approach. We invest in tokens, long and short. In addition, we invest in companies directly through their public equity, public debt, both long and short. And in addition, we do invest in some early stage companies as well, focused primarily on the financial services sector, digitization of those assets.
Wonderful. Well, welcome back as well. A pleasure. And last but not least, Harsh, a little intro, a little background for everybody.
Hey guys, I'm the founder of Startup Hackers. It's an early stage education group for early stage startup founders. Additionally, I'm a venture partner at our ventures where we help startups across sectors raise funds. I do have extensive experience with the FinTech space. I used to be the sales manager for Paytm, which is India's largest fintech payment company. And looking forward for this amazing discussion today with some amazing panelists.
Absolutely. Same here. Same here. And gentlemen, I want to put it out there. I mean, right now we've got headline after headline after headline. I mean, this PayPal news and their continued acquisition spree, Squares as well. We're seeing more payment processing companies getting into the space. Discover finally announced last week that they were going to be getting into the digital currency space with a strategy that was going to come out here in the next few months. Visa has continued to make acquisitions and deployments. MasterCard is not far behind them. Amex is so far out of the picture at this point, but nonetheless, I would love to hear from each of you what you're seeing happening in this fintech space and what all of this means as fintech and blockchain are starting to merge together in ways that we haven't previously seen until recent. Greg, you've got a smirk on your face, so I'm going to start with you. It seems like you've got something.
Well, sure. All these different networks basically beginning to have essentially, I call it a third rail, but not in the way we usually think of third rail as something that electrocutes you, but a different alternative than just banks and card networks, that there might be essentially on-us transactions. But I'm much more excited about the fact that Jack Dorsey sold that first tweet. I think he typed that out while he was sitting in the backyard for $2.5 million. Makes me wonder in the NFT world, if Jack sold that one for $2.5 million, what's the complete catalog of all Donald Trump's tweets worth in the marketplace? That man is now finally a real billionaire because he can sell all those tweets. And so we have a brave new world with a whole new marketplace and liquidity ahead of us. And super excited to see how that plays out. That's the event of the week for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for those who may not be aware out there in the audience, Jack Dorsey tokenized his first tweet on March 21st, 2006 to be sold. Justin Sun of Tron put $1 million bid in, and then it was completed yesterday at $2.5 million, as Greg mentioned as well. And they used the application Cent. CENT.com to do so, or .co, pardon me. But Greg, you bring up a great point. I mean, more and more individuals are looking at this as an opportunity, but also the NFT space as a whole is opening up new marketplaces. Now, the transaction of that is very unique. I mean, we've got over $300 million transacted, well over 300 million transacted in these first about 64 days of the year, when last year the NFT space only saw about 250 million total transactions as well. So wild and crazy days for sure. David, coming to you next. What do you think about all this? I mean, again, PayPal making this acquisition of Curve, which by the way was not Curve Finance that everyone thought it was, which shot up Curve Finance on the DeFi space. This is Curve, a crypto security firm as well. But to you, David.
I think all these developments are coming fast and furious. To me, that's very encouraging. It means that the serious players with serious dollars are making serious commitments to the space, which means that advancement will happen, asset prices will go up, inflation, so on. The other piece of the puzzle, as I see it, is right now, other than these institutions who have to be in the business of transforming for this reality, beyond them, the players in the business, the users in the business, right, a la the NFT world, it is such a small population right now. And I think the real explosion has yet to happen. Right. I've heard about NFTs from my son, who's 13 years old, and he's pretty technologically, I'd say, enveloped. Sure, like most 13-year-olds are, but he doesn't fully appreciate what is an NFT, what's it going to do for me, why is there value in it, so on and so forth. I think people are going to ask that question, and certainly older people for which this is, shifting the paradigm. We are going to get, though, very, very quickly, I believe, to a full appreciation for and adoption of a lot of these services, concepts, assets, so on and so forth. And when there is that mass pervasive understanding and adoption, I don't think that explosion, that nothing that's happened until now is going to even hold a candle to what is going to happen then. And I think we're getting, faster and faster to that place. And I think that's very exciting.
When you talk about that pace and pace towards mass adoption, wild question, but how far off do you see that? And the reason I ask is, I mean, legitimately, we are moving very, very quickly. And some of these platforms that we've already talked about that are new marketplaces, that are, FinTech proper, are creating easy onboarding ramps where it doesn't seem like there is crypto involved, that there is blockchain involved, that anything's involved other than just normal day-to-day.
That's excellent, right? The less disruption, the more Mac this is versus DOS, right? The better, right? And people will simply go ahead and ignore what the underlying or what the belly of the beast looks like, and they will totally be smitten, just by the functionality entirely. And I'm sorry, I'm lumping a lot of things together, right? We're talking very abstract right now. We could be talking about, just processing financial transactions, which is very mundane, as opposed to NFTs, which is something I would say a bit more revolutionary. But I think all of this is going to happen within mass adoption under 3 years. I think we're at such a blistering pace. The technology companies and the financial services companies and the innovators are going to press so hard. The strides that are able to be made, I think, are incredible in terms of the compressed time frame. And I think in under 3 years, we will be living in a radically, radically different world than we were even just 3 years ago.
Wow. Okay, 3 years. That's the first mark. 3 years. Gianpaolo, I see you ready to unmute, so I'm turning it over to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like to remind myself and everyone I speak to about these things that we are the first collective generation in history that is seeing technology inventing itself. So it's going to be 3, it's going to be 4 years. Yes, it's not that relevant. What relevant is, I think, is the fact that this is a never-ending process, because, we are going to zoom into the future at breakneck speed, and what happens and what is waiting for us around the bend is no longer predictable or fathomable. I think it's very exciting. We see now the equivalent of a perfect storm preparing. I mean, we have major corporates jumping into the blockchain space and buying even crypto, and that's why, the mother of all crypto, BTC, it's going through the roof. Then we have, the giant financial institutions finally taking heed of what's happening in the FinTech space, and they are, sort of getting ready, but they haven't yet gotten completely ready, but they will get ready. And I think it's interesting to see what happened when those two worlds clash. The fact that, the giant banks will compete with the online banking groups and the non-banking groups, and we'll see how that pan out. I think in the end, it should be good for consumers and possibly also for the businesses, but again, that's a very exciting challenge and game. And then I see, something else also happening, which is, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I got disconnected for a second. I also see the DeFi space, as I said earlier in my introduction, which is actually creating a whole set of new rules and a parallel universe. And I don't like to put the discussion in terms of whether or not the DeFi space will be prevailing over the traditional environment. I think that's not very conducive to investment making decision. I think it's important to see how the two universes will, coexist or blend into one another. And I think it's very exciting what we have, really. And again, we are in a tunnel. Actually, we feel like bullets in the barrel of a rifle. And where we're gonna be shoot at, on what target, remains to be seen, but it's really accelerating. Thank you.
So talk to us a little bit about DeFi for a second, Gianpaolo. I mean, DeFi, we've got over 40 million or excuse me, 40 billion, give or take, today's numbers, locked away in protocols, networks, applications. I mean, this is not small numbers. It may be small in some respects, but it's a lot of money. Is this something that we're going to see aggressively grow for a future of fintech or payments for us? By the way, Uniswap also became one of the top rated decentralized applications globally over the weekend due to the amount of transaction volume it was doing. So to that, I'm curious, tell us a little bit more about DeFi.
Well, the regulatory watchdog, will point towards, more and more implementation of RegTech. And again, I think this will be the discriminating factor, I think, in seeing, what growth DeFi can have, because, I think there is a quarrel now, or a fight going on between, a totally deregulated environment supporters and those who, like or need to have it deregulated for their own vested interests. Probably the optimal point is somewhere in between. Even DeFi sooner or later will have to bend to rules. I mean, with more massive capital input and inflows going through those platforms, I don't see it very realistic to imagine that the regulators and the governments behind them, don't want to know what's going on, or will not try to see what's going on. And because let's not forget, that anyway, even internet, yes, it's totally, based on independent nodes around the world, but we're all subject and contingent to having power generation. And if we are shut off, we're not very happy. So the reality, digital is good, but I don't think it is as free as it sounds. I mean, of course it is free so long as, there are some checks and balances in place. And again, this is all unraveling as we speak. And it probably will take, 2 to 3 years, in terms of regulatory and compliance issues to see how, governments and operators pan that out. But I think, there will be an influx or if not an interference by the powers that be also in this space, because otherwise I don't see it sustainable over the long term anyway.
Thank you, Greg or David. Any comments on that? I see both of you wanting to comment there. So Greg, we'll start with you. Any comments? David, and then Henry, I'm coming up to you.
No, let me cede my time. I'm just listening and imagining.
All right, Greg, David, any added thoughts on that? Thank you, Jean.
I'm going to take a pass as well.
Okay, all right, Henry. Wow, double passing. All right, Henry, don't be three, but tell us any comments to add on to Gianpaolo, but just in general, what are you seeing in this fintech space? We talked about it a little bit last week, but we'd love to hear your comments further.
Sure, thanks, Kyle. You know what? I think I'm going to have to take the third pass. Sorry about that. No, I'm just kidding. I'll speak a little bit. So you know me. I mean, I've worked with you for the last year, so I like to put a little history first before I comment the present. So let's look at Bitcoin back in not this bull and bear market, but the last one. So 2017 seems like 1,000 years ago now. That was only about 4 years ago. That was the beginning of a bull market for Bitcoin. So if you go back to January 2017, Bitcoin, probably some know, some might not know. You got to look it up. But I can tell you right now, so I can share that with you. The price of Bitcoin was $1,000 in January 2017, and it maxed out at December 2017 at $20,000. So if you held on to it, just on paper gain from the beginning of the year to the end of the year 2017, you would have made 20x, right? But obviously there was a correction in terms of a bear market subsequently. So fast forward in 2020. Not even to the present, we have Bitcoin price basically trading at a yo-yo, basically dipped like around 5,000, March 2020, 5,000. By September 2020, Bitcoin price went up to 10,000. So basically 2x it if you held them for that 6 months duration from March to September 2020. And around today, it's at 50,000. Okay. So it's kind of crazy. You went from March 2020 to now from 5,000 to 50,000. You have a 10x there, right? 10x I'm talking about. But if you look at how Bitcoin started was sort of December 2018. That was the last major financial crisis prior to the pandemics. A guy or a bunch of guys named Satoshi Nakamoto, I think it's a group of people, I don't think it's one individual, put it very elegantly how this Bitcoin together. That was the beginning of Bitcoin. And no surprise, every time when we see a financial crisis or a major crisis, we see investors flocking to something alternative to a central fiat. So in combination with the major announcement from Walmart back in, I think, January, all of a sudden we see so much activities in FinTech, DeFi, so on and so forth. So I think that's how we got here. Now, I think, it's very exciting to be in DeFi, but at the same time, I wouldn't write off centralized stuff yet, because I think since the inception of fiat, thousands of years ago, but I'll use it 300 years ago from the pound. Central governments around the world has been extremely powerful. One of the ways they can become and continue to be very powerful for the majority of two reasons. Number one is their reserve, fiat reserve, and number two is military power. It's very hard to fight them. So I wouldn't write off centralized stuff yet. I think another concept to be entertained, which is a little bit than what we're focusing on DeFi, is CBDC. I think CBDC is extremely exciting. I think I can see CBDC is going to continue to get more traction. But no doubt in my mind, NFT is actually very exciting. Tokenized stuff. I have actually a blog on that topic. I'm happy to share more on that topic as well.
Tell us a little bit more. We actually have a little bit of a show, so preview us for tomorrow around tokenization, and then Gianpaolo, I'll come back to you.
Absolutely. I think about literally 2 years ago, I started blogging the topic. I did a lot of research first, and I was actually very excited about tokenization. Basically, what it is, I call it, you fractionalize illiquid investments. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's very exciting in the sense that, if you look at, let's say, whether it's real estate, normally it's associated with certain features like liquidity and also very high unit price. Let's say if you buy a home, hypothetically, it's probably going to cost 100, 200, 300, maybe, into millions. But now, potentially, there are projects that they are trying to tokenize, real estate. So what that means is you can have fractional ownership. And at the same time, if it works on the secondary market, you can trade them and to sell them. So you can invest in them, if you're a small retail investor, but at the same time, you're going to have liquidity instead of being tied up. So I think that's a very, very exciting space. I think we're still in its nascent stage per se, but very interesting comment that David is always very fascinating in the sense that he make all these great predictions. I think we're going to, bookmark his comment and we'll see what happens. No, I'm joking around, David. I think I really don't know where we're going in 3 years, but no doubt in my mind that there's a lot of fast developments. But once again, tokenization is only going to be as good as liquidity in the secondary market, in my opinion. I've seen project being tokenized, but the issue is, we haven't seen the liquidity. Until that sort of back end stuff or the liquidity sort of can really play it out, obviously, I think it's still going to take a little time, for this sort of whole tokenization become more fruition on a full time, on a fully basis.
I would like to jump in there, and Henry, I appreciate the comments. I'd like to take the comment from a different perspective, respond from a different perspective. I think that my prediction, was certainly when I said it a little while ago, regarding the adoption and the reality of the activity. However, when it comes to, historically, I'm a person of markets. That's been my life professionally. When it comes to providing liquidity for assets, right, as opposed to value. In other words, Dorsey's tweet, I don't know why somebody paid that. I don't know if they'll ever be able to trade that tweet again. I have no idea, but someone bought it. They placed a value on something that until now was not considered an asset at all, and title for which was not transferable at all. So to me, that's the revolution. I think it's going to happen. Are some stuff going to make sense to me? I think so. Is some stuff not going to make any sense to me at all why people are placing value in certain things. For sure, I'm too old for some of this stuff. And I'm not all that old, but, you know, I think some things have just passed me by. But when it comes to your point about liquidity, depth of the market, now you start getting me scared, honestly, because I've lived through a couple of cycles where we have an asset. We've now figured out a way to go ahead and repackage that asset, call it commercial, you know, real estate backed securities. And now we're going to go ahead and slice and dice it. And now we're going to go ahead and give people reasons to own it because we're going to go ahead and shift up credit qualities and therefore package AAAs and sell it to this guy and double Bs, sell it to that guy and so on and so forth. And by the way, not only are we going to do that, you're going to be able to go long on that. You're going to be able to go short on that. And let's go put the whole thing on steroids and give everybody a ton of leverage too, because that's what Wall Street is awesome at. That's frightening to me. I think it's stupid. If we get there, we'll get there. We love to get there. We love to screw ourselves up in that way in the United States, where we are the kings of this in the world. And yeah, if we get to the point of, you know, the tokenization of assets essentially has simply allowed to, you know, lots of people who should have never been in the asset, being in the asset, investing in the asset, levering up on the asset, taking paper gains on the asset, and so on. The whole thing's going to end poorly. And it's okay. We learn those lessons time and time again in this country. But I hope we don't get there. But again, you know, we're free market, slippery slope. You know, we'll go down that rabbit hole, you know, if we're given that opening.
Gianpaolo, I see you've been wanting to chime in, so I want to make sure you get a chance before anyone else goes. So go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy that somebody had a comment because, you know, after 3 passes, I was fearing for the first time that I would have to comment my own words. Well, it would be ridiculous. No, but I totally, I mean, I am, I would say, long on tokenization. I only want to add 3 caveats. First, yes, we haven't seen liquidity. Second, tokenization hasn't yet weathered a major storm. And I think with hindsight, what would have happened last year with the pandemic if we had already tokenized the economy 3-4 years earlier? You know, what would have happened of those real estate assets? And because, you know, the amplitude of a bank run, of the equivalent of a bank run with tokenization may be massive and unfathomable. And I totally echo the Jersey side good common sense, because, you know, absolutely, you know, we have tokenization is here to stay, no question about it. And I think it also spelled great hopes for financial inclusion in many parts of the world where it is impossible to access a capital markets. You can, you know, sub-fragment it into little modules, tiny modules, and participate. I think this is great. But again, it is not yet come of age, and we'll have to see, first of all, the liquidity, because until, you know, the broker dealers are serious about it and begin to steer their own clients. That is, I mean, I've been an investment banker too there for 2 decades, and, you know, until I see that there's someone there pushing capital into it, I have my qualms. I mean, of course, it's beautiful and it's noble and it's disruptive, but again, we'll have to make it a staple, which is not yet. And to be a staple, it has to weather at least 1 or 2 recessions and see how it performs. So for the moment, you know, we take it, but then we'll see. And I see, I wanted to just, Kyle, just 1 second, and then I'll pass. I see a huge wave of consolidations. You know, I see a lot of David versus Goliath type of battles, you know, and, you know, it might be that the new actors on the scene may even take down the big giants, you know, but I see there's a lot of activity on that, you know, and maybe that's also food for thoughts for those who want to invest. Thank you.
No, thank you. This has been a great conversation. Harsh, I apologize. We haven't had a chance to get to you yet. Greg, do you have a comment to add on to anything, or go ahead? Oh, Greg, you're on mute. All good.
The odd thing is I mean, I don't understand how central bank digital currency is going to work. Let me say why. Like, if the United States is going to do central bank digital currency, the question is going to be, who can hold it? I mean, obviously they're doing it for Americans, but how do you have a central bank digital currency and then say, well, can you only hold it if you're a resident? Well, how's that going to work for tourism or remittances or trade? Like, they don't have, like, for something like that, I don't understand how it's going to work. But for something like non-fungible tokens, like if I'm getting an early ticket to Top Gun or I'm getting a non-fungible token for a Picasso, I absolutely understand how that's going to work, you know, with identity, without identity. Like, that seems simple. And I mean, I do see this as a wave that's just going to sweep through. There'll be a whole nother form of value besides relying on, you know, fiat money or traditional commodities, or there's just going to be a place for people to store, trade, fractionalize wealth. I mean, I don't know. It was just sitting right there. I hadn't really thought that entire universe of all the tweets would be, it's like discovering oil under the North Pole. There's a whole new set of value there that only exists because human consciousness can attribute value. And now we have a way to protect it from an intellectual property point of view. It is an amazing discovery. And it's one that I understand, whereas other things that are catching a lot of hype and vibe, I just don't know from a practical point of view how the US government's going to feel about people having like tokenized dollars being held in, you know, in Iran, right? Like they don't have a solution for that. Whereas for this, I perfectly see how it's going to work.
And there are a few early discussions of that, just to let you know too, Greg. So the BSN, Blockchain Service Network out of China, is actually working on a universal central bank digital currency project that would allow for that. Project Ubin out of Singapore and JPM are doing the same thing. Here in the States, that's a TBD, as it's not very well talked about. And Europe, we've got the digital euro, which is, again, talking all about this. But to your point, a lot of that is not discussed. If anything, it's kind of kept very quiet because we don't know
who can hold it. I mean, anybody can hold cash or gold, but if you're going to have a central bank digital currency that can be held by criminal elements around the world because it's a universal? I mean, they can hold dollars. They hold $100 bills. Most of the $100 bills are outside of America. Where do you think they are? But if you make an inferior asset to that product by putting limitations on it, it's not going to be very attractive. And so the NFTs, though, I mean, the sky's the limit right now.
It is. And Taco Bell just entered the NFT game. Talking about sky's the limit, we have tacos as NFTs, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. There you
Taco
go.
Bell. Harsh, I'm going to pause everyone for just a moment. Harsh has not had a chance to chime in. Harsh, any comments to anything that was just said? But obviously would love to hear your view. I mean, in India, things are going back and forth, rumors versus no rumors. Yes, crypto, no crypto, blockchain, no blockchain. It's all over the place. First, any comments, and then tell us what you're seeing in India as well.
I was actually beginning to think I was forgotten over here. So as far as blockchain is concerned, India is definitely, I see a lot of good developers working on blockchain technology. Primarily, utilize the current focus right now is in terms of smart contracts, trying to use smart contracts for supply chain optimization and agriculture as well. The problem is in the crypto space where government has kind of banned Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and they banned other RBI associated banks as well to kind of do an exchange with the cryptocurrencies, right? That's where the challenge is. And the government is kind of launching their own CBDC in a way, which is going to be the government's own cryptocurrency. But to David's point, I kind of don't see how that's going to work, because the essence of a CBDC is that it's supposed to be decentralized and created by the public. It has to be completely democratic, right? If a central bank is creating that, how it completely uses the decentralized aspect of it. It's just a central thing. Then how is it different from a fiat currency in the form of plastic money? There's literally no difference. It's essentially the same, right? So that is why the CBDC concept to me doesn't seem to make sense with how the entire crypto is originally structured and how do we keep it decentralized, right? So that is something which we truly need to look at. In India, actually, NFTs still haven't gotten that prominence as they've seen in US, right? The point that you mentioned about Jack Dorsey's tweet, and last week we discussed about William Shatner's cards, right? So they have gone completely over the board. So right now, definitely we are seeing like a huge, huge tsunami heading towards NFTs, and really lot of growth and a lot of excitement towards that. But it seems to be seen how solid it will be to kind of sustain that wave, right? Right now, obviously, since it's something new, it's something exciting. What happens is that initially there tends to be a huge rush, as Henry was pointing out, right? The Originally Bitcoin went all the way up to $20,000 and then fell back to $5,000. Right now it's going all the way up to $50,000. It's again probably going to have a dip, right? So we still need to see how the NFTs are going to take shape. I additionally see a lot of opportunity in the DeFi space. So actually, just last week I spoke to one of my friends who is quite active in the GCC, right? And they are extremely bullish on the DeFi space because it's essentially a very coherent to the Islamic finance kind of ways of, right? So the Islamic finance says that they do not want interest, they do not want a centralized bank charging interest, they don't like these commissions and all that which happens, right? So they are extremely bullish in the DeFi space, and they are trying to kind of figure out a way how they can structure the entire DeFi space in a way which is globally acceptable, right? So that is why there are a lot of money from the Middle East, the Arab whale, and a lot of others are invested in that side of things to see how which direction that goes towards. So DeFi is definitely going to be an interesting space. An additional interesting opportunity which we haven't seen till now. We've seen a lot of arts being tokenized, right? Primarily, we a lot of physical art is being tokenized and kind of sold through fractional ownership. Additionally, additional opportunity which I see is in terms of putting a hold on piracy, right? Once we have digital movies, creatives, structured in terms of digital tokens, we'll be able to track each and every moment which is happening, right? So I think this could be a huge fight against piracy, right? Once we have these songs and movies and all the other creative assets being tokenized, it should definitely take a huge step towards the fight against piracy. So this is how I see some of the major areas.
And we may with again Square's acquisition of the majority of Tidal, Jay-Z's music streaming service as well. There's something that we could be seeing there. And I see in the comments, yes, Taco Bell did tokenize. Again, we're going to talk about this in a few more minutes here on VCTV around NFTs as a whole. But yes, Taco Bell did take an NFT of their spicy potato soft tacos. So if you love the spicy potato soft taco, you can buy an NFT and it can live in your digital wallet and you can always hold on to it. Yes, that did happen. But we have actually a very interesting question from the audience I'd like to propose to everybody here. And that is how blockchain is helping or will help payment service providers, so PSPs, and how blockchain may integrate into their infrastructures. As well. So I'm going to leave that as an open question to see who has comments and wants to jump in first.
Well, this is Greg Kidd here. And so, I mean, I'm from the Ripple universe. And so blockchain for us is, it's not that we're going to send each payment on the blockchain, but if you have payment providers around the world that are sourcing funds in one market and delivering them in another, if they need to rebalance so that their partner on the other side doesn't run out of like liquidity, you can do that on the blockchain. So instead of sending each transaction, if just a bunch of payment flows are flowing from the US to Mexico and Bitso's getting like low on pesos, you could top it up in a digital currency, whether it's Ripple, it could be something else, but Ripple's particularly good because in 3 seconds, you can basically show that you've moved value. And so that liquidity provider on the other side isn't going to run out. And so blockchain is a great way for reducing the amount of excess liquidity that's tied up in the correspondent banking world around, around the globe.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Greg. Any other comments on that? I hope that answers the question out there. If no other comments, I do want to move to the second half here and get to what challenges are we expecting to see and more around opportunities, right? What should people be paying attention to? What should people be looking at investing in? Because the challenges are going to be aplenty as fintech and blockchain and payments all start to merge together as well. And so, Harsh, I'm going to come to you second to last since I came to you last before. Henry, let's start with you. What challenges do you see around fintech and payments here in the next coming years as blockchain may or may not play a role? As we know, it doesn't always apply as well.
Sure. So I think, some of so far, some of the more successful fintech, I think I've seen so far, without mentioning the other component, let's focus on this component directly answering the question is, I think some of these fintech, if they have what I call really good regulatory chops. So if you look at Coinbase, right, they have to work closely with the government regulation side. If not, they're not gonna. I would credit them for one of their major successes, really having the regulatory chop. No surprise, every time when you deal with money, I mean, that's just gonna come. It's just a function of it. So I think as we, as fintech continue to build out, I think more and more on the regulation side, people will need to focus on that issues. I see that that's going to be a major hurdle because regulation, it's not the easiest things to navigate. But I can see that's, one of the many challenges, but I think that will be one of the top on my list.
Oh, thank you, Henry. Gianpaolo.
Sorry, Kyle, tell me again what it is the question, because I lost a moment when you were talking.
No, it's okay. I know there was a break on my side, so apologies for that. But the question is, what are some of the challenges that are going to be seen in the fintech and payment space over the next couple of years as we start to advance technology and we start to see changing of habits and behaviors? What challenges do you perceive after everything we've talked about today that people need to be aware of and thinking about around fintech?
Well, I mean, challenges. I would say that it's an entirely new scenario that we're faced and confronted with, in a scenario in which this is a little bit like in physics. If you have a bug on a desk countertop, and the bug is moving in two directions only, and then the bug reaches the edge of the desk, and all of a sudden it discovered the third dimension, which is height. I think we are at an inflection point where we're seeing, new models being adopted and implemented. Of course, hacking is always a threat, but I think blockchain is quite good, in that respect, as hack protection is concerned. I look a lot at Ethereum as the mother of all architectures, with smart contracts to do more and more things. And again, if you zoom back a little bit, what's interesting for an investor and is to see what the titans will do when it comes to fintech. Really, are they gonna jump in? And I think they will have to, because I don't see a global financial institution remaining as a dinosaur, because otherwise it would be the end of Goliath. David will take over, and so I think that I wouldn't call it a threat. I would call it some alternative scenarios that we can have depending on how certain players in the market will define their own posture, and because either they are wiped out by history, or they merge, collide, clash and morph into something else. I think this is what may have an effect on all of us as investors and consumers, but I don't see real threats, as technology is addressing threats as we go deeper and deeper at an ever faster pace. But we also know that life being what it is, new threats may come up. So I don't think it's a very, from an utilitaristic point of view, very interesting to talk about the threats, especially on an environment that is relatively new to all of us, because we don't have 20, 30 years of track record and different weather cycles behind us to at least take an informed decision. I mean, it's an arrow. I mean, we're pointing forward, and we can't see the tip of the arrow because that tends to infinite. But I think that the markets will adapt. Regulators will want to have a finger on it, and it will be a battle in which, as I say, for me, power generation is a key, because we too often we tend to underestimate that power generation and power control is key to the internet. Without power, we cannot have this call. our viewers could not see us. So the reality is, there are several tables. This is like a casino. We're only looking at blackjack, but there are other tables that we have to take care of because, the casino thrives and lives with all of those tables, properly arranged. And we can't concentrate only on one table if you want to see how the casino's revenues and bottom line is. So I think we need to take a look at the whole setup. So I don't know if that satisfies you as an answer, Kat, but this is what I feel at the moment.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you very much, Greg. Last comment in terms of hurdles that the fintech space, I mean, having come from Ripple and many other companies as well, what should people be thinking about in terms of hurdles that we may see around fintech and payments in the coming years? And then we'll come around for closing thoughts.
Well, just specifically, the hurdle is still the regulators, excuse me, haven't decided whether, gas, liquid, solid is these innovations. Are they commodities? Are they currencies? Are they securities? Until there's that clarity, there's this FUD factor that creates this, essentially this friction cost in all these new innovations. It's like with DeFi, there's a cloud hanging over its head. When that clarity arrives, and that is the one good thing about litigation and these lawsuits, we're going to know the rules of the game. And I do think we're on the cusp of something that is transformationally different from our reliance on traditional banking and card rails. I'm really just excited to be around that. I think this week has had more data points than any other week, and that could have been said true of the week from before. And so I feel lucky to be living at a time when my 13-year-old daughter knows more about what's going on in the world than I do, and I have to get educated by the next generation.
Wonderful. And thank you, Greg. Closing thoughts, David, let's start with you. Closing thoughts on where this industry goes, anything else you want to put out there? And then, of course, where can everyone find you to continue the conversation online?
So I'd like to make a closing thought, and maybe for better or worse, it's novel to the conversation thus far. To Greg's point about figuring out what this exactly is, how it's going to be regulated, my concern when it comes to the regulators in the industry is that even before they figure out the solution to that, we're going to start to quickly be concerned about antitrust and monopolization. I know we feel like it's really early days, but I think there's going to be an enormous amount of movement, of acquisition, of consolidation, of building girth really, really fast in a really, cornerstone existential area of economy. And before anybody knows it, there are going to be a couple of folks that are going to control everything, really quickly. And I think people, need to think about that now, because we are clearly, we all know, blurring the lines between payments, financial services, custody. You go ahead and lay it all out. Once you digitize this stuff, it's so easy for one entity to do everything. It's not going to be impossible. And so therefore, I think it's going to be, a real concern. And I think it's important, to just keep it top of mind. It's not a today thing, probably won't be next month or next year. But I do think it's going to come, fairly quicker than people would otherwise think when it comes to a nascent industry. And then lastly, with respect to me, again, first of all, I want to thank the panel. I love, being part of such a smart group of people and hearing everybody's thoughts and certainly being challenged and enlightened. And I can be reached at david@prochaincap.com. It's david@prochaincap.com. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Harsh, quick closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you?
Sure. So definitely some of the points made by David and Greg definitely resonate with me as well. Additionally, I would look at it, this could be a major way where we can completely redefine and rethink how the banking system is operating, right? So we discussed this last week as well, right? You have a choice between banking companies using technology to enable themselves, and you have tech companies doing banking, right? So if there's a fight between the two, I definitely see the tech companies doing banking winning. So when these tech companies doing banking like PayPal and the others, they start to dominate, we could see a completely new form of banking, which we've not seen till date. And the conventional banks and the conventional government are, they don't like this kind of change which is happening, and it's happening so quickly that they are completely caught off guard and don't know what to do. So that is why it has come to a very precarious kind of a situation where we are trying to understand how do we regulate it, how do we keep it in a way which is inclusive to everyone involved. Because what could happen is, to David's point, actually, if some people get too much power in this, it could lead to a huge polarization of wealth to a select few people, and majority of them kind of completely being ignored and kept outside of the market, right? So it's a combination of various things going on right now. It could be completely redefine the way we look at banking. At the same time, it could, if the income inequality was high right now, it could go even worse down the line if it's properly not kept in check, right? So it's in a very, it's in a state of flux. It's a constantly dynamic situation, and it's really, we need to kind of see where it's going down the line. So that that is something, it's something to be excited about. At the same time, something to be scared about as well, to kind of understand which way it's going. So as David pointed out, really glad to be a part of this amazing panel with amazing panelists with all these amazing insights over here. Always get to learn a lot over here. So if anyone wants to find me, they can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. They can reach out to me at Harsh Shetia, and we'll be happy to connect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harsh. Greg, where can everyone find you online to continue the conversation?
I'm at twitter.com/GregKidd. That's the place to find me.
Easy peasy. Go buy his tweets, ladies and gentlemen. With that, Henry, to you, quick closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you online?
Sure, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of excitement in DeFi. No doubt about that. I think it is certainly very exciting. The world that we have been living in has been very centralized. Obviously, with decentralized, the positive and negative, certainly very exciting. Certainly, I think a lot of people focusing on the positive. But I don't think, making an observation and a humble prediction, I don't think centralized stuff is going away anytime soon. And I strongly believe that I think DeFi and centralized finance can certainly coexist. I think it's big enough. Would it one day decentralize over everything? I have no idea. But I think in my lifetime, I think we're going to see both worlds coexist. Henry on here. I can be reached at LinkedIn. Henry, my last name is On, N-G-A-N, email henry.h.ngan@gmail.com. Thank you for having me. Great discussion with my colleagues here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you as well. Gianpaolo, you know the drill. Close us out.
Yes, right. Well, I mean, the last thought is for the elephant in the room. I totally agree with most of you guys in the past and what you said. I mean, I think we need to remember that the central bank digital currencies are probably just another way to corral the cattle to just another, pen. And it may not change a lot from that perspective, other than the jargon and the platforms being digital from fiat. But I think something that probably would take another panel at least to address specifically. I'd be more than happy to elaborate further on that. But you can reach me at gianpaoloparigi1@gmail.com or on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. Pleasure being with you, gentlemen, today.
Wonderful. Thank you again, everybody, very much for all the thoughts and insights. To our audience, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for all the great comments and questions as well. Hello to all of you around the world. Also, if this is your first time, make sure you subscribe, share the episode, and check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear from all of today's speakers and all speakers of the VCTV family as we bring together the best and the brightest, as you saw today, to share their perspective and on-the-ground insights around different technologies, industries, and regions around the world. If you'd like to be on a show like this, do reach out and we'll find that right spot for you. And a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me everywhere online at Kyle Ellicott, along with on all social media platforms, as all of our speakers mentioned as well. Please do reach out to continue the conversation. Make sure you add context, where you heard us, where you met us, and what you would like to continue the discussion about as well. We're going to take a short little break here on VCTV, and then we're going to be back to talk more around NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, and what's happening between the worlds of gaming, digital art, and now branding as the enterprise starts to enter the market as well. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you back here in just a moment. Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.